The skin on your lips splits first. You don't notice the bleeding until you taste copper. Your canteen is empty by 9 a.m., and the water inside it isn't cool anymore. It's warm, plastic tasting, almost thick. You've got eggs in your pack, hard-boiled from last night. By noon, they smell like sulfur and regret. This isn't camping. This is a low-grade fever you choose to sit in. Now here is the number that does not make sense. In 1942, British soldiers in the Western Desert were storing butter at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Not salted butter, sweet butter. The kind that turns into yellow oil in a car glove box after 20 minutes. They kept it solid for 3 days. No ice, no diesel-guzzling refrigerator, no shade structure that required an engineering degree. The object they used cost about 2 cents to manufacture back then. Today, you can buy the exact same thing for $2 at a garden center. It is unglazed clay. A pot. 2 of them actually. One nested inside the other with a layer of wet sand between them. But before we build the thing, I want you to feel why your brain refuses to believe this works. Because I promise you, the first time you hear about the pot fridge, you will think it belongs in a survivalist's fever dream. You will assume it barely drops the temperature by 5 degrees. You will assume the desert air drinks the water so fast you'd have to refill it every hour. Those assumptions are wrong, and the reason they are wrong leads us to a phase change that most physics textbooks bury in a footnote. Why does this work when logic says it shouldn't? Here is what happens when you try to keep food cold in dry heat without electricity. You dig a hole. The ground at 6 inches is cooler, but ants find your cheese in 40 minutes. You wrap food in a wet bandana. That works for exactly as long as the water lasts, which is never long enough. You buy a $200 thermoelectric cooler that plugs into your truck. That works until your battery dies, which it always does at 2 a.m. And then you have a plastic coffin full of warm milk. Every solution fails because heat moves toward cold. That's the second law. You cannot stop it. You can only slow it down. The clay pot trick does not stop heat. That is the first counterintuitive detail. It uses heat. Specifically, it uses the most aggressive heat in the environment, dry, moving air, as a fuel source for cooling. If you are in a humid jungle, this trick fails completely. The clay stays wet, the air cannot evaporate more water because it is already saturated, and your food rots faster than if you left it on a rock. But in a desert, in high, dry heat, the air is a sponge, a starving sponge. It will pull every molecule of water it can from that wet clay surface. And when water evaporates, it steals energy from its surroundings. That energy is heat. The temperature drop is not subtle. In field tests, a properly built clay pot cooler called a zeer or a pot-in-pot refrigerator holds an internal temperature between 40 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit when outside air is 100 to 120. That is a 40 to 60 degree delta. That is the difference between a refrigerator and a hot car. But here is the buried detail, the one the survival forums always get wrong. They tell you to use 2 clay pots and sand. That part is correct, but they never explain the geometry of failure. And if you get the geometry wrong, you do not get a cooler. You get a muddy mess that molds over in 48 hours. Let us go back to the Western Desert, 1942. The British 8th Army is chasing Rommel back and forth across North Africa. Supply lines are stretched. Food arrives on trucks that take 3 days from the port at Alexandria. By the time a soldier opens a ration tin, the margarine has separated, the jam has fermented, and the cheese is a science experiment. Someone, the records do not say who, which means it was likely an Egyptian or Bedouin local trader, showed the British a device that had been used along the Nile for perhaps 2,000 years. Unglazed pots, sand, water, no moving parts. The British called it a desert refrigerator. They issued a field modification to ration crates. Soldiers were told to keep the outer pot wet and let the wind do the rest. It was not magic. It was evaporative cooling, which every human culture in arid climates had used for grain storage, water cooling, and meat preservation long before mechanical compression existed. Here is the physics in one image you can hold in your head. Imagine a wet clay surface. Water molecules at the surface are vibrating. When dry air passes over, it knocks those molecules loose into vapor. But a molecule cannot leave without pulling energy from its neighbors. That energy leaves the liquid as heat. The liquid gets colder. That cold transfers through the clay wall to the inside air. The inside air drops temperature. Warm air outside cannot push through the clay easily because clay is dense, so the cold stays trapped. The only cost is water. You pour about a liter of water into the sand every 8 to 12 hours, depending on how aggressive the heat is. That water evaporates out through the outer pot wall. You are not drinking it. The desert drinks it. And in exchange, the desert gives you cool. But here is the failure point I promised you. Most DIY videos tell you to use any unglazed clay pot. A flower pot from Home Depot, a terracotta saucer, an ornamental planter. They say, just make sure it is porous. That is wrong. Not slightly wrong, catastrophically wrong. Here is why. Flower pots are fired at low temperatures to remain porous. That is good, but they are also thin. A standard terracotta pot is about a 1/4 inch thick. When you wet the outer pot, water soaks through to the inner pot within minutes. The sand layer between them becomes saturated. The inner pot gets wet on its outside surface. And when the inner pot gets wet, it does two things. First, it conducts heat directly from the outer pot to the inner cavity because water is a better thermal conductor than dry clay. Second, it creates a humid microclimate inside the pot. Humidity above 80% at 60 degrees feels clammy, and food, especially vegetables, rots from fungal growth instead of heat. The correct pot is thick-walled, not decorative, not thin terracotta. You want unglazed olive jars, water crocks, or purpose-made clay coolers with walls at least 1/2 inch thick. The thickness creates a thermal lag. Heat takes time to move through thick clay. And the sand layer should be moist, not soaked. You wet the sand until it holds together when squeezed. Dripping means failure. I learnt this by destroying 15 pounds of potatoes in the Mojave. July. Temperature was 112 in the shade. I built a textbook Zweipot cooler with cheap flower pots. 4 hours later, the inside temperature was 78 degrees. That is a 34-degree drop. Not bad. But the potatoes were wet. Condensation on the inside walls. Within 2 days, they sprouted eyes and turned soft. The cooler worked thermally, but failed biologically because I ignored vapor pressure. The correct build uses a lid that is also unglazed clay, not plastic or metal. Plastic traps humidity inside. Metal conducts outside heat directly to the food. Clay breathes. It lets vapor escape slowly while keeping the cool mass inside. The method, step by step with reasoning. Here is the build that actually works. Cost, less than $10 if you buy seconds from a pottery supply store or salvage old garden pots. Step 1. Find 2 clay pots, unglazed, red terracotta or brown earthenware. The outer pot must be at least 4 inches wider in diameter than the inner pot. The gap between them will hold sand. The inner pot must fit completely inside, with 1 to 2 inches of space on all sides and at the bottom. Do not guess. Stack them in the store before you pay. Step 2. Drill or carve a small hole in the bottom of the inner pot. This is not for drainage. It is for air exchange. Cold air sinks. Without a hole, the bottom of the inner pot becomes a dead zone of stagnant, cold, humid air. That is where mold starts. The hole, about the size of a pencil, allows a slow convective loop. Warm air rises out the top gap, cold air sinks through the hole. You will not feel the airflow, but your vegetables will last 3 times longer. Step 3. Fill the bottom of the outer pot with 1 inch of clean sand. Coarse sand is better than fine sand. Fine sand compacts and resists water movement. Coarse sand lets water wick upward through capillary action. That wicking is critical because it keeps the entire outer pot wet evenly without you having to pour water onto the top every hour. Step 4. Place the inner pot inside. Center it. Pack sand into the gap between the pots, one handful at a time. Tap the outer pot gently to settle the sand. Leave the top ½ inch of sand loose so water can pool slightly when you pour. Step 5. Add water. Pour slowly into the sand, not onto the inner pot. You want about 1 liter for a medium-sized cooler. Wait 10 minutes. Check if water has pooled at the bottom of the outer pot by tipping it slightly. If water runs out, you added too much. Dump the excess. The sand should be damp like a wrung-out sponge, not submerged. Step 6. Wet the outer pot's exterior surface with a cloth. Do not just pour water down the outside. That creates channels. Wet it evenly. The entire outer surface should look dark and damp. Then place the lid on top. The lid must also be unglazed clay. If you cannot find a clay lid, use a thick cotton cloth stretched tight and tied. Do not use plastic wrap. Step 7. Place the cooler in the wind. This is the step everyone gets wrong. They hide it in the shade. Shade is good, but wind is better. A breeze across the wet outer pot doubles the evaporation rate. If you have no wind, create it. A small battery-powered fan aimed at the cooler from 3 feet away drops the internal temperature another 8 to 10 degrees. The British soldiers in the desert use the wind from passing truck convoys. Not joking. They part the coolers downwind of the engine exhaust fans. Let me describe what this looks like under real stress. I set this up outside Ridgecrest, California, August 15th. Air temperature peaked at 118 degrees Fahrenheit according to a kestrel dropped in the shade. Relative humidity 11%. Wind intermittent, 5 to 12 miles per hour from the south. I built the cooler with 2 thick-walled olive jars. The inner jar held 4 items: 2 eggs, raw, not boiled, a quarter pound of butter, 3 temperature and a digital temperature probe logged every 10 minutes. The control was a second identical set of food items inside a standard rotomolded cooler, the expensive kind with 2 inches of foam insulation, placed right next to the clay cooler in the same shade. At 10 a.m., both coolers read 82 degrees internal. The clay cooler had just been watered. By 1 p.m., the foam cooler read 97 degrees. It had gained 15 degrees in 3 hours. The clay cooler read 59 degrees. It had dropped 23 degrees. By 4 p.m., the foam cooler was at 104 degrees. The butter was liquid. The eggs were warm to the touch. The clay cooler was at 54 degrees. Not a typo. 54 degrees when the air outside was 118. Here is what surprised me. The tomatoes in the clay cooler lost moisture. Their skins wrinkled slightly. The tomatoes in the foam cooler stayed plump but grew a white fuzz by day 2. The evaporation inside the clay cooler creates low humidity, not high humidity, because the clay pulls moisture out of the air as well as heat. That is the opposite of what most people assume. Dry cold preserves better than damp cold. The fail point I did not expect: the sand dried out completely on the windward side by hour 6, even though the leeward side was still damp. I had to water twice as often as I planned. The fix was to bury the outer pot halfway in the ground. The soil insulates the bottom and slows evaporation on the downwind side. Next time, I dig a hole first. You have probably never seen a clay pot cooler for sale at REI or Cabela's. That is not because it does not work. It is because it does not scale. You cannot sell a subscription to a clay pot. You cannot put a brand logo on a sand and water cooling system that costs $2 to manufacture. There is no planned obsolescence in a fired ceramic. Modern refrigeration is beautiful. It is also fragile. Compressors fail. Refrigerant leaks. Power grids go down. The average American refrigerator consumes 400 to 600 kilowatt hours per year. That is fine when the grid works. But watch what happens after a hurricane, a wildfire, or a heat wave that takes out power for a week. People throw away hundreds of dollars of food because they have no backup that does not require gasoline. The clay pot is a backup that never asks for fuel. It asks for water and wind, 2 things that are free or cheap in every desert on Earth. I am not saying you should replace your kitchen fridge with 2 flower pots. That would be stupid. I am saying that if you live in a dry climate, if you camp off-grid, if you have a cabin without power, or if you just want to keep your car camping eggs from turning into a biohazard by day 2, this is a tool that works. And the reason you have to dig through field manuals from World War II or anthropology papers on Nile agricultural practices to find clear instructions is not conspiracy. It is convenience culture. We forgot because we did not need to remember. Until we do. Every survival skill has a hidden threshold. Below that threshold, it is a parlor trick. Above it, it is a lifeline. The clay pot cooler sits right on that line because it asks you to believe in phase change energy transfer instead of a plug and a compressor. That is a hard sell for a brain raised on instant gratification. But here is the quiet thought I will leave you with. The same physics that pulls heat out of a clay pot in the desert is the physics that pulls moisture out of your skin. Sweat does not cool you because it is wet. Sweat cools you because it evaporates. Your body already knows how to do this. You just never connected your own skin to a $2 pot. There is another file in the vault that connects directly to this one. It is about the forgotten technology of the cooling tube, a buried ceramic pipe that drops air temperature by 30 degrees before it enters a tent. No energy required. We will open that file next week. For now, build the pot, keep the sand damp, and stop trusting the grid to save your eggs.